What they were asking you if they received their history. Yeah, it sounds like it's analyzing
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out to our first meeting this year. Welcome to our 17th year of Catalyst. It's so wonderful to see all of you here tonight, being part of this incredible giving circle. It's a circle that's growing, it's thriving, with donors who care and causes that matter. My remarks are only about 2 hours and 15 minutes, so Jolene asked me to cut it down a little bit, so I'll see what I can do. But thank you very much to the Hospital of Central Connecticut for graciously hosting tonight's meeting and being a steadfast supporter of Catalyst over the years. I don't think Amanda and Liz are in the room. If they are, raise their hand. No? Okay, but we appreciate...
Sandy is here.
Where's Sandy? Sandy, thank you very much for representing the hospital. To the food services, to Steve Coco, to everybody on those staffs, we really appreciate the work that they do to host us in a complimentary fashion, which really helps us with our programs. I would also like to thank the Catalyst Fund Steering Committee members who take the time to meet in between our meetings and help create our program every year. So if you could just kind of raise your hand as I call them so people know where you are. Sharon Beretta, Christine Brummer, Maureen Brummett, Gary Brummett, Fran Gallagher, Lindy Martin, Catherine Smith, and there are a couple people who are absent today, Mark Berardi, Corey Humes, and Marianne Smilowski, and Emily Yukna. So thank you to all of you. Let's give them a round of applause for their leadership. So now, as many of you know, we kind of changed things up a little bit last year. We're doing a better job of sharing the Catalyst Giving Circle mission with more people in the community, in more places, and in more ways. We had record membership of 68 members last year, and we're well on our way to exceeding that for 2019. So when I left the office today, we had 65. Wait a minute. 66. Hold on. Jolene's sending me messages. 67. 68. Am I ending at 68? Did we tie last year already?
No, keep going.
69?
Yes, on the nose.
We've already exceeded last year's membership. So this year, our goal is 70. So if one lucky person wants to pay their membership tonight, we're there. This year, we also had a social event in May. I believe it was at a brewery. I don't remember much from the evening, but I'm told it was a very good time. A lot of people got to see each other outside of our Catalyst meetings, and a lot of people brought guests, and they learned something about our program, and we really appreciate that. So some of the slides on our slideshow are from that event, so you can see those as they pass by. We also had an activity, and on the easel over here, you will see a chart here that says what I love about being a Catalyst member. So, or what I enjoy. So if at some point this evening, if you're a Catalyst member and you're returning, you wouldn't mind scribbling a little something there about what you enjoy about Catalyst, we'd love to capture that. And then we're going to frame that, and we're going to hang that up in the office so that other people who visit us can also see your comments about being part of Catalyst. Last year, we offered new membership options to widen our Catalyst circle. Local businesses sponsored some of their employees as members for the first time. A big thank you to the Hospital of Central Connecticut, OK Industries, and Shaler Auto World for being employee sponsors last year, and those membership options will continue. Are there any representatives here from any of those companies? Raise your hand. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for coming back. We also offered members the opportunity now to pay for their memberships online in installments. We now have recurring gifts options on our website, so it makes paying for your membership and making that gift a little bit easier. And maybe we offered a gimmick or two in the last year or two, like raffle drawings that we'll have at the end of this meeting tonight for those who have paid their membership. Will anybody who is new to Catalyst this year or who has come back after being away for a while, please raise your hand so we can welcome you back. Thank you very much. We placed a green dot on the name tag of new members, and we ask all of our returning Catalyst members to please seek these folks out during the evening to say hello and make them feel welcome. We also have some guests with us tonight who have not yet joined Catalyst, but could be checking us out. So everybody behave tonight. We haven't picked out a particular colored dot for your name tag, so would those people raise their hands for us now so we know that you're guests tonight? Over here. Over here. Thank you very much. I told you my script's being edited as we speak. Jolene's doing it from her seat. Okay, so we tried this last year. It went pretty well. So for the next 2 minutes, we're going to ask you, and I know everybody kind of has been talking at their table already, but we want to give you a chance, just in case there's somebody you don't know at your table or don't know that well, to take 2 minutes to introduce yourself to everybody at the table that you're sitting at. Just say hello, get to know everybody a little bit more, and then we'll come back in 2 minutes and continue the program. Okay, thank you everybody for participating in that activity. Of course, we want to thank all of you for being Catalyst members and for joining us tonight. Your time and generosity make Catalyst such a wonderful and worthwhile program. And with increased participation as our circle grows and our goal to increase our grant from $10,000 and higher is now a reality. As we said to you last year, we challenged our membership and said that if we were able to exceed 65 members last year, we would be able to increase the grant that we give out for the first time since we started Catalyst. And so this year, we're pleased to announce that we will be making an award of $12,500 this year. So thank you very much. Many of you have been with us from our earliest days in 2003 when we launched the Catalyst Fund, and we appreciate your support and loyalty of 5, 10, 15 years, etc. Last year, we had a slideshow up here, and we were thanking everybody who was on board for 5, 10, and 15 years. That got us going with recognizing people at those levels. This year, we would like to recognize those members who are entering ranks as 5-year members. And so with this appreciation of longevity for members, we want to take some time to recognize you. Will Lindy Martin, Marianne Varga, and Steve Varga please stand so we can thank you for being 5-year members. So thank you all for participation in Catalyst. I believe most everybody in the room understands what a community foundation is. It's a foundation founded by the community. It's one where the community came together. In this case, some of our industrialists came together and put some money together to create a foundation that has grown now to almost $50 million in this community, with donor-advised funds, scholarships, community initiatives committees, grant committees, people who are really making a difference in this community through Catalyst and many other efforts. And we really appreciate that. When you join Catalyst, when you start a donor-advised fund, when you participate in creating a scholarship in this community, when you donate to our Civic Leadership Fund on an annual basis, or join a committee, you become part of the Community Foundation family. So all of you are members of our Community Foundation family. It's almost an 80-year tradition here in Greater New Britain, and we are very grateful for that. But before we continue tonight with our program, I would like to take a moment because, as many of you know, today is a very, very special day. 75 years ago, after 2 years of planning, 150,000 landed in and around the beaches of Normandy. Countless others provided support. Families cheered and cried for those who left, for those who served. And if all of those efforts were not successful, many have said that our world would have been a much different place, that our way of life and our course would have been different. So a moment of silence in remembrance. Our way of life today, our ability and our willingness to care about, learn about, contribute to causes that matter, stems in part from that heroic effort. You chose today to be part of a giving circle that is more visible, more relevant, and more impactful than ever before. We should never forget the sacrifices and all of the efforts that have allowed us to do what we do for our community. So I thank you all very much for making your commitment to the Greater New Britain area through the Catalyst Circle. So with that, let's get started with the rest of our program. And it's my honor to introduce a member of our steering committee, Gary Brummett, who is going to take us through the next part of the program. We thank Gary and the steering committee again for all the efforts that they've made to support this. Gary?
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. I have a script, and I'm going to start off script. Because of my business, I utilize that little bugger called social media a lot. And I'd like to suggest I'm going to take an image of the Y poster, and I'm going to post it on a couple of Facebook pages and Instagram that I have for personal and business. And I'm going to hope that people are going to reach out to me and ask me what it's about. So I mentioned that to you. If you think that is something that you could pull off, and you might get somebody to call you about Catalyst and then come and see us and meet us, that would be great. Thanks. Thanks, David. Thanks for all of you for being with us tonight in our 17th year of Catalyst Fund. We sincerely appreciate all the work of the Catalyst Steering Committee, foundation staff, organizations that graciously and generously host our programs, the experts who come in and educate us about the needs of our community, and especially you, the donors, who fuel the Catalyst Fund with your gifts and your participation, making it come alive each year in a beautifully responsive way in this greater New Britain community. As an update to last year's Catalyst program, we voted to make a $10,000 grant to support CCARC in their efforts to offer informational workshop series relevant for families of adolescents and young adults with autism spectrum disorder as they transition beyond their secondary education. This program is up and running, and representatives from it will be with us in our November meeting to give us an update on their progress. This year, based on your votes, the topic chosen for our focus is suicide among children and young adults. Tonight we will receive a broad overview of this topic and recommendations for how the Catalyst Fund grant can make the best impact in the community. Based on the learned outcomes of this evening, staff will work with the steering committee to create a request for proposal that will be sent to organizations that provide services that address the selected issue in four-town service area of Berlin, New Britain, Plainville, and Southington. Our current plan is to have the proposals presented in brief to the Catalyst membership at the September meeting by a representative from each organization competing for the grant. However, if the foundation receives a large number of proposals, the steering committee may select three or four to present to the membership in September. A representative from each potential grantee organization will join us again at our final meeting in November to answer all the questions that we may have for them. The representatives will leave the room and we will discuss the merits of each before voting and awarding the grant of $12,500. And now I would like to introduce Christine Brummer, who will tell you about and introduce tonight's speaker. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker to help us learn more about this year's topic, suicide among children and young adults. Suicide among young people is a serious problem, and it is now ranked the second leading cause of death for children, adolescents, and young adults from ages 5 to 24 years old. And while the number of children and teens attempting suicide is on the rise, so is the number of those who actually die from it. While there is a strong evidence for rising rates of suicidal thoughts and actions among young people, what researchers aren't so sure about is what is driving this trend. Regardless of the reasons behind the trend, something has to be done. Tonight, Tom Steen will help us learn more about this serious topic and how Catalyst may make an impact. Tom is the past executive director of the Capital Area Substance Abuse Council, CASAC, and a suicide prevention expert who serves numerous boards of education, community organizations, and local prevention councils in our region to promote substance abuse prevention and early intervention. He is an active member of the Connecticut Suicide Prevention Advisory Board and is a QPR, Question, Persuade, and Refer Master Trainer. Connect, More Than Sad, Talk Save Lives, Safe Talk, and Survivor Voices Trainer. Tom is the co-chair of the newly formed Connecticut chapter of an American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Prior to Tom's work as a consultant, he has worked extensively as an executive director for several nonprofits in his 41-year career. He has experience with fundraising, government contracts, and community grants, and has worked with many government agencies and foundations. He has extensive senior management and leadership experience, much of which has been gained while working directly with community leaders and community donors. Tom is also a survivor. He has lost his son Tyler to suicide on December 14, 2009, and our hearts go out to you, Tom, and your family. Following the presentation, Tom will take questions. However, if you'd like something clarified during the remarks, please raise your hand and ask a question. And now please join me in welcoming Tom Steen.
But before we do that, I always, through all my training, I've trained hundreds of trainers, I've trained thousands of gatekeepers, which we'll talk a little bit about today. And one of the things I do at the beginning of all training is to do a self-care announcement. Suicide is a tough subject. We know 1 in 4 people in any size group such as this have been impacted by suicide. Either lost suicide survivor like myself, or has lived experience, has survived a suicide. So at any point during this presentation, you feel that the subject material is too heavy and heavy to heart, it's okay to step out of the room and catch your breath. Jolene has said she'd be my lifeguard. She's in the back of the room, and she'll follow you out to make sure you're okay. And I'll probably follow you out too, because it's really important for self-care. This can be a tough subject. I'm going to show you some stuff that's going to really open your eyes to how significant a public health issue is with suicide, especially our young people. So, and if you need to leave the room and you're okay, just give us the okie dokie or the thumbs up so Jolene doesn't follow you into a bathroom. All the kidding aside, we really care about you. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to do the self-care announcement. So let's go. And the first slide I want to talk about is a slide that is really important. We know that suicide has been a public health issue for many, many years. But we're beginning to understand that the words matter when you talk about suicide. How many times have we said commit suicide in this room? I'll tell you, I did. Right? And we're finding out that that's not the right statement to make. You know, people commit crimes. They don't commit suicide. Suicide is what I usually say is an extension of something going on in the person's life. You know, we know that 90% of people who die by suicide are struggling from some sort of mental health crisis or brain disease like bipolar or schizophrenia. So it's a symptom of something going on in their life that pushes them to the dark, deep place where they don't think they can get out and they lose their life. So commit's really not the right word to use. There's better language, and you can see here. And the other thing is fail or successful. And I show this to groups that I present to because we lose 22 military people, either veterans or active service military, a day to suicide. And what is it all about? Today, the 75th anniversary of D-Day, complete the mission, right? So, or the mission's been successful. So we need to be careful of those words, because those people at risk, it can be the trigger that can push them to a place where they now will be at risk. Okay? So I'm going to show you like 3 or 4 data slides pretty quickly. You might want to ask some questions, follow-up questions. Oh, and I didn't say this at the beginning. I'll be the last one to leave the room today, because I know there'll be questions or comments or things that maybe you wouldn't want to raise your hand, but you want to talk to me about. So I promise, I will be the last person to leave the room. Promise, okay? So here's some data. We lose a person to suicide every day in Connecticut. Every day somebody dies by suicide. We rank 45th out of 51 if you include Washington, D.C. And that sounds pretty good. You know, my colleagues from Wyoming, or I'm sorry, Montana, and Wyoming too, have really high rates of suicide, they're like 1 and 2. Well, I suggest to you that most people in Connecticut live close to a hospital. And we know that women attempt more, but they use poisoning or substances for their attempt. Guys or men attempt less, but they die more because they lose lethal means. So if you're close to a hospital, and you can reverse an overdose or a suicide attempt quite easily. The other fact that this slide shows is that we have good gun safety laws in Connecticut, probably some of the best in the country. We average 6 firearms per household, legal, 6. And when I do training, people say, well, it's much less than that. I said, no, it's 6. That's what the FBI says. Well, my friends in Wyoming, think about their culture, where it's folks that are, the folks that have ranges or farms. The average household there is 25. And we know through statistical data that more people die by suicide via firearm than any other way. It's like 51, 52%. So it's really important to know the geographics of where you are as it represents. So that's what the Connecticut slide, our friends from AFSP gave that to us. So can you push me up to the next? Cool. I'm going to show you this slide because this should really open your eyes. Now this is the youth. This is what you're going to be working on. And when you, this is from the Chief Medical Examiner's Office here in Connecticut. And I want you to see 2017 and read the line. That's why you folks are doing what you're doing, and I salute you today, because we need more resources to help. But the trends are going incredibly up with our youth. And look at that, ages 15 to 19 compared to the previous years. If that doesn't scare anybody, I don't know what will. And then on the bottom, it's kind of small writing, I'm sorry. It's the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds in Connecticut. This is 2017. And it's the third leading cause of death for 15 to 24. So you heard some data earlier tonight that has a wide range. This kind of impacts it closer. So you can see that, yeah, this is where you should, the Catalyst folks should put their money, because I think you can make a real big impact. Yeah, question? This is all Connecticut. This is all Connecticut. Yes?
Being the data person, the previous slide said that for ages 15 to 24, it was the second leading cause.
Correct.
This is third, so.
It's kind of how it pools the data together.
I wasn't sure if it was different years or if it was different locations or.
Yeah, and it's all based on CDC data, but this is Connecticut data that might be skewed just a little bit. And it's 1 to 100,000. I mean, I'm not a data person.
Right, well,
so.
you said the previous page was Connecticut data as well, that's why.
Right. You want me to go back to see? Did the clicker work? No, okay. So what do we do about this problem? How do we affect it? Youth suicide is about prevention. Period. about prevention. We have to come up with ways to prevent suicide. So when you think about your proposals for the not-for-profits, you want to make sure that in those proposals there's factors that reduce suicide, and they call risk factors, and we're going to talk a little bit about them in a minute, and increase protective factors. How do we protect kids from what they're feeling and what they're struggling from? And then, God forbid a death does occur, we should plan to be able, which is called a post-prevention response. Because when somebody dies by suicide in the community, it's like throwing a pebble in the middle of a pond. The waves are really big. Well, that's the impact of an immediate community, and then all of those people are now at risk. So when a death does occur, we have to put a good plan in place, so safe messaging and people get the right kind of support. Push the yellow the right way, Tom. There you go. So here are the strong predictors or risk factors with kids. This is really broad because I don't have a whole lot of time. We could go really deep into this. But the first one is a previous attempt or a death in the family by suicide. And that's why it's up on the top of the list. Current talk about suicide. You know, I train parents. This thing is more lethal than a fire when it comes to kids. Boy, mom and dad, when little Sally and little Johnny show that they're paying their cell phone bill, they own it. Guess what? They don't. Mom and dad does. And we need to really promote things around protecting the kids from what these things can do. The strong wishes to die, this is the messaging, and you probably heard this when I trained educators, faculty across the state. We really talk about this so teachers can really pick up those subtle messages that kids might be given, that they're in trouble. Depression, hopelessness is really, and kids, by the way, suffer from depression. They also suffer from anxiety. And with all the pressures that our young people are going through, we need to be sensitive to it. We need to understand it. We have to be comfortable about knowing what we see and then react. Substance abuse goes without saying. And you know, we know 1 out of 4 people that suffer from a mental health disorder of some sort or clinical depression go for help. That means the other 3 are finding other ways to treat themselves. And so what you have is what they call a co-occurring event. You know, only have a person depressed, but now you have a person that is an addict or has an addiction. And that's really troublesome. And the last one, recent attempt by family or friend, is kind of what I said earlier, on top of the list. It also puts folks really at risk. So here's the protective factors, and I want to focus, actually I have a next slide will show you what I mean by protective factors. It's a bad news, good news slide. But as you can see, effective behavioral health care. And if we do anything as citizens of Connecticut, we need to work on this. I know the budget's in trouble and all this stuff, and they're talking about toll. But no, you know what the funding for suicide prevention is in this state? 0 from our state government. So we need better behavioral health for our kids. I can tell you how many parents come up to me, my kid's in trouble, but I can't find a bed for him. I can't find a place to get him treated. It's really serious. Connectedness. The research is showing that the more trusted adults in young people's life, the better protected they are. And this is interesting. This is what the research is showing is when kids, and I'm not talking about mom and dad, I'm talking about a trusted adult, where a kid can go and say, hey, I'm in trouble, or my friend's in trouble, I don't understand what's going on with me or with my friend. It's the best way to connect to help. Kids don't think they can get better when they're suffering from a depression. And they tend not to go to adults, they tend to go to their friends. And the friend's trying to fix them, and that's not good. So self-esteem is a big one. And then religious, cultural, and personal benefits to discourage suicide. And that's really having the conversation. I did a suicide prevention training over near Newtown, in Sandy Hook here about 3 or 4 months ago, and there were 4 middle schoolers with their parents in the audience. And these kids talked about, all of their friends are talking about suicide, openly. And when somebody talks about suicide, they're at risk. And you need to ask what's going on. So it's a concern for us all. So here's a slide. This is a slide from the Mental Health of Connecticut high school students. It's a CDC self-administered test. It's done every 2 years. This is 2017 data. And so this is a selection of high schools. And I don't think New Britain was in this one. They were in the 2015, but not in the 2017. But the results are eye-opening. And now they survey a bunch of stuff on kids' behavior. This is just the suicide questions. And you can say on the top left, 8 students feel sad or hopeless in a 2-week period. Self-reported in a classroom of 30. 4 students seriously considered suicide. 4, classroom of 30. This is Connecticut, folks. Not somewhere else. And 2 actually attempted, self-reported. Now you go to the right-hand side, 6 purposely hurt themselves by cutting or burning. 6 years ago, the pros and all of the higher-ups, if you will, said that there was a disconnect between that burning and cutting were not connected to suicide. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has done some recent studies to show that it's really the other way around, that it is a sign. So we should always be concerned. But the last 2 are the best news. It's all about trusted adults and about kids reaching out for help. The next one says 7 students actually saw a doctor or a counselor about their emotions and their stress. In 2015, that was 2. So more kids are reaching out for help. What a great thing is that. And then 21 students who say that they have at least one trusted adult that they can go to either in school or in their life about what's going on. That was 7 in 2015. Improvement. I showed this to school faculty. I make them tap themselves in the back like this because they're doing something right. Kids are reaching out. So as you look at your proposals, you might want to build that in. Is what is these agencies going to propose to build that capacity of trusted adults? I'm watching the time, Julie. I really am. My recommendations. And then I'll open up for questions. I look at it in 3 ways. Prevention, which is training about suicide and how to recognize warning signs and risk factors, how to connect people to help, to postvention, which is postvention planning. So if a death does occur, that it's handled correctly in a safe manner, where it doesn't put other people at risk. And the third thing is grief support. You know, it's not the days and weeks after somebody dies by suicide that immediate family is affected. It's weeks, months, and years. And think about what kind of support is out there right now for our communities when people do suffer a loss like that. So I'm really, for me anyway, there should be a three-pronged approach, if you will, or 3 key focuses, something that you might consider in your process. So here's my recommendation. The first one is a evidence-based suicide prevention program called QPR, Question, Persuade, and Refer. CPR. I'm a retired Y director, 30 years. I used CPR 3 times and an AED machine once. I was 4 for 4, so that was good, right? But you know, it was because it was in my brain. Easily react to, oh, there's like trouble. Somebody had a heart attack. Well, we're in the hospital, so I think we're in good shape. But if somebody did, my memory, I could remember and immediately go to action. With QPR, it's the same thing when somebody's suffering from some sort of mental health crisis or anxiety disorder. It's the same thing. Learning what to do, learning how to ask the question, learning how to persuade them to get help, because maybe you need to work a little hard on it, and certainly referral. And when it's in school systems, it's just not the faculty. It's the bus driver, the school custodian, the librarian. They're all talking to the kids. When it's in the community, it's all of you people. And all the circles of life that you're in, I guarantee you there are people out there suffering. And knowing those things and what to do with that information when your gut's telling you there's a problem is key. So all adults should learn this. Everybody that's breathing in this room should learn QPR, my opinion. So what do we do for kids? All right, come on, Tom. Let's take a coffee break. Let's take a coffee break. QPR for teens. It's the same evidence-based curriculum, but it's just kind of twisted, twist is the wrong word, but it's kind of just designed and tweaked enough where it applies to kids. So mom and dad know QPR, so do their kids. And so when there's a problem, they're all talking the same language. And if it's the police officer, the school nurse, or it's the pastor at church, or the youth group leader, all have the same information. It's a great set to keep kids safe. So here's a couple of other, being a volunteer for AFSP, I had to promote them as well. The first one is a general audience presentation called Talk Saves Lives. I'll come back and do it for you if you want me to. It's 45 minutes long. Sorry, it'd take a little longer than 25 minutes. But it's a really good general audience program that really educates people. It gives them a really good foundation to understand what suicide is doing to our communities and how we can keep our communities safe. So it's a good general thing. When you do QPR training, it's designed for small groups. The Farmington school system trains all of their sophomores and seniors in QPR as a part of their school curriculum. And they do it in small groups, much more effective. But sometimes you got a large group. And so the Talk Saves Lives is a really good program. The other one is really connected to school systems, called More Than Sad. 5 minutes, yes, man, I'm almost done, I swear. More Than Sad is a suicide prevention program for parents, teachers, and teens, all in one shot. It's like a 3-part program, and it focuses on those 3 areas. Really good stuff. And I talked a little bit about post-vention planning and then post-vention response. I'm working with a lot of school systems now, as well as communities, about doing this. And I really strongly recommend that you for what you put in your RFP, request for proposal, that you ask them how you're going to address this. How do you get communities to plan for unfortunately, might be a suicide death, and how to handle it properly. So plan first, and then you know how to respond. Be sure that folks have the necessary group support that they need as they go on their journey. This is a program called Healing Conversations out of AFSP. And it's a program manned by volunteers, so when there is a death by suicide, volunteers actually go to the home of a family upon their request to help them early on in their journey, that you're not alone, and that there are people out there who can help support you through, certainly with the early days, but when the weeks and months and years come, that there's a group out there that will support you. Here's some resources. In the middle of your table, there's the information. Jolene printed out that slide for me, thank you very much. Just gives you some resources. I won't go over them heavy because I'm 2 minutes into it, but these are resources that you can use, that you can recommend to your grantees as they put together their proposals. But I'd like to show you that the new text line, the suicide prevention text line. Connect in the subject line, asterisk 741741. It's where kids talk on cell phones now. They don't call us, they text message, right? My oldest is 33, my youngest is 27, and that's all like the, can you call me, please? Yeah.
The Trevor Project just recently introduced a text
Yes.
version as well.
Trevor Project, LGBTQ+, that community is 4 times more at risk for suicide than their counterparts. And then 211 and the national hotline is connected. So if you call the national national hotline, 1-800-273-TALK, you get the 211 center here in Connecticut. We're one of the only states that happens. So you're talking to people in the state when you call the line. So a pause slide right here. I see a lot of deers and headlights in the audience, and I hope I didn't push too much information on you, but I wanted to give you just a really good basic understanding of what suicide prevention is about. Again, I'll be in the room at the end of today's meeting, so if you have any really direct questions or questions that you want to ask me privately, I'll certainly be here. But I always close with a painting that my son Tyler did, who passed away in December 2009 by suicide. He was attending college in Savannah, Georgia. My wife and I and his 2 brothers had no clue how in trouble he was. We didn't know about warning signs and risk factors. We thought he was fine. But after his death, we pulled the layers away, and wow, the kid was in trouble. And we all missed it. So I share with you that you're on a real good mission. We need to save the Tylers of the life. And how I healed from my loss is, it took me about 2 years, but there's a gap in my life, that a hole, if you will, that'll never be filled. It was where Tyler was. So I learned how to build a bridge over that hole, one board at a time. So thank you for letting me add a board to my bridge today, and I'll open up for questions.
Thank you so much. Questions, please? Mitch?
Well, you
Yeah,
open. When you opened, you talked about social media and cell phones being so dangerous. Can you say more about the messages? There's caricatures in social media and on various websites that kids will pick up on, and they're very dark, and they have very dark messages, and sometimes even encouraging suicide, from my experience working with kids. And that then seems like it develops norms almost within their peer group. Can you speak about that and what's being done either on a grand scale or one person at a time to change those norms?
You know, a great question. I think it first starts with educating parents. Kids use acronyms. They got these like coded things, and what do we know about them? You know, I'm not going to tell you a whole lot, but I don't do well with acronyms. So that part of it is beginning its education, understanding that all of these social media sites have systems in place now, and so making parents aware of them and the kids aware of them too is, I think, really very important. School systems now are buying software, you know, those Google Docs that your kids, if you have kids that it's all kind of online in the cloud. Well, in these programs now search for those keywords, and then it's reported back. And then if a student's at risk, is on the list, if you will, with the schools now can take immediate action. So there's stuff happening out there, but you know, we got to do a whole lot better.
Okay, another question? Oh, here we go, sir.
Just a concern about the difference between youthful suicide and adult suicide. Are the factors significantly different?
Excellent question. There is some subtle differences, and it depends on the age that you're, the age group that you come from. We know young people act impulsively. So if you're thinking about suicide, this ring, but you don't have the capability of suicide, the microphone over here, and when the two come together and cross over is when a person's most at risk. When that happens with youth, it's impulsive. Which is why we have to catch them before the two things. With adults, especially as an older population, things along the line of stresses with life, you know, whether there's a divorce or financial problems or a disease that could push somebody to that point, or you know, I've done my thing for God and country. My wife of 65 years is gone, and I don't want to be burdened on my family. So it just really depends on the age. The group you're focusing on is really that impulsivity thing, and making sure that people understand why we need to talk to kids when they're using the suicide word. And you know, it's called, let me use an analogy. If you knew me and I was waiting to get a raise in my job, and I turned to you and I said, boy, if I don't get that raise, I think I'm gonna die by suicide, or commit by suicide. You might not think anything, and that's just how I'm saying it. But if you knew I was going through a divorce, they're getting ready to take my house away, maybe incarceration, well, that means something. So context is what it's called. So with kids use the word like it's, oh, suicide this, suicide that. To me, that's a teaching moment. And when a young person uses that word lightly like that, we should stop right in the tracks and say, when you use that word, I'm very worried about you. I'm very concerned. And use it as a teaching moment by saying, you know, let's find a different word to use, like, well, if you don't get into that AP class this year, you'll be very disappointed. And let me help you to get there as a part of what we can do to educate kids so that they stay away from that suicide word. Because they can really, you know, thinking about suicide over here, having the capacity over here, can easily cross section, and then that impulsivity can really be very, very dangerous. Any other questions?
That's my job.
It's my job. Good questions, everybody. Really good questions.
Where does cyberbullying stand for a percentage of youth suicides?
Good question. We don't know. But we're getting there. We're getting there. One of the things they call, the chief medical examiners call this psychological autopsy, where they actually go back 2 weeks, 3 weeks before somebody's untimely death due to suicide, and look at it. The problem is we have such a serious opioid crisis in the state, there's no time. So when you look at that cyberbullying thing and try to connect the two, you can't get the data. So we need to deal with that opioid crisis. And by the way, you talk to any first responder who goes on scene and gives a patient Narcan or naloxone in reverse an overdose, the first thing they say out of their mouth is, I'm still alive. Talk to any first responder, they'll tell you that. So how many of those accidental overdoses that we're hearing in the state are really overdoses or really maybe suicide? And because they don't have time to do that psychological autopsy, we don't have that data. So let's hope we can get our hands around it, because I think that's an excellent question.
So one more question. Also, Tom will stay after. You have more. Anybody?
Sure, sure. It seems like it's still a fair statement that so many people affected.
It seems from listening to you and from some other things I've heard that it's still a fairly fair statement to say that so many people closely affected by attempts and successes had no idea what was going on, as you stated, and that how do you attack prevention And, you know, it's when it's so hidden, when young people are so good at keeping all of that from us, that's the crux of this. What do we, you know, what do you do?
The first thing I want you to do is sign up for a QPR gatekeeper class, because that's what we train in the gatekeeper classes, learning with that coded clue. Kids who are thinking about suicide are using codes, but we don't see it. You only know what you know at the time, right? When my son died, my wife and I didn't know he was in that much trouble, but he was, because he had all the signs. He had all the risk factors: a major breakup, flunking out of school. I mean, we don't have enough time. But really, it just, and for all the people that I've talked to and support, who, you know, recent lost survivors of suicide, they all say, "I didn't see it coming." But then afterwards, when you start pulling the layer back, it's like, wow, yeah, it was all there. So it's education. It's really a good question, you know, and we all need to really just be sensitive. You know, you're a businessman, I understand. You know, anybody that owns a business, you train all your employees. Not only is it a great program for like when I educate school faculty, I say it's great for your kids, but it's good for you too. Because now you have skill to recognize it and get the person to help, to a health professional that can put them on a journey of healing. Do you all read today that they finally passed the mental health parity law in Congress today, House of Representatives? That's key. You know, physical health and mental health should be equal, should not be unequal. And so finally we've got legislators, and our two senators have been very, very forthright in their crusade about parity, number one, and suicide prevention, number two. So, and I'm going down next week to talk to all of them. So I'll report back, see where they are, what's going on here. Any other questions? Everybody, good luck at what you do. I know you have a great staff that will help you to select the right candidate for your grant. Thank you for all of it. You know, maybe next year.
Thank you, Tom. We really appreciate your insights and you're sharing your personal struggles too, because that really humanizes it for each of us as we think about how do we examine it? How do we address it? How do we approach it? And what are we looking for in agencies that want to also address this and examine it and do something about it in our community? And I'm sure we're going to learn more too from the agencies that present to us and submit their RFPs. So with that, we have some wrap-up business to take care of. It looks like it's time for our raffle. But before we do this, as you find your tickets, we first want to do one final check of anyone in the room who may not have made their 2019 Catalyst commitment, or maybe haven't renewed yet, or is checking us out. And if there's anybody here who wants to make their commitment right now and want to raise your hand, our staff, Jolene, Candace, Kayla, will look for you and also bring you your ticket if you're making a commitment right now. So I'll give you a moment if there's anybody in the room that wants to do that and be part of the raffle for this evening. We're thanking everybody by having this raffle, for being part of Catalyst, for bringing people to the table and being part of this.
What can we win, Dave?
That wasn't a plan, just clear. Thank you, honey. I don't know if you realize what's going on here, but Linda just had neck fusion surgery, and I'm extremely surprised that she's here tonight also, but she didn't want to miss this. So we thank you for coming out. She's one of my heroes. Tonight we are giving away two $20 gift cards to Amazon, two $20 gift cards to iTunes, and a gift card to Dunkin' Donuts. So, that one got the yes. Okay. Now we know which cards we got to make sure we have next year. So I think it's time for Candace to bring up the tickets, and we'll pull the raffle.
We found one on the floor if somebody lost theirs.
Oh, did anyone lose their ticket? Did anyone lose their ticket? You might have an extra one there now. Also a reminder, if you're a Catalyst member, please put what you enjoy about being a Catalyst member on the board over there before you leave. Okay, so here we go. Candace is going to pull the ticket so I don't get blamed for anything. We're gonna get this right. We don't want there to be any controversy here. Okay, I think they all start with 6-8, right? Everybody's tickets start with 6-8? Okay, so I'm going to read the last four. 4448 is the first winner. There she goes. Once again, I did not pull that ticket. There's a reason for that. Okay. Digging deep. 4453. 44. Terry. Jerry paid today. I believe it was in pennies. I said something about bringing penny rolls in to pay for gas. You can still bring guests to future meetings. Please do. We'd love to share what Catalyst is all about with more people from the community. Our future meeting dates and locations, as you probably have already penned them into your calendar, but I'll review. Thursday, September 19th at Stanley Black & Decker University, starting once again at 5:30. So Stanley Black & Decker will be our host on September 19th for the evening in which the organizations will be making presentations for the grant. The third and final meeting of Catalyst will be Thursday, November 14th at Shuttle Meadow Country Club, once again starting at 5:30. Once again, November 14th at Shuttle Meadow Country Club, we're hosted by an anonymous member of Catalyst who is sponsoring that evening. So we thank them for that. So please note those dates, and we hope to have you with us. We do record the presentations now, since last year, that are made at each meeting. So if you miss a meeting, the video recording will be made available so that you can see it or review it. Maybe you take a look at it before the next meeting to kind of review what the presentation was. But that also helps to keep our members informed and involved in case they miss a meeting. Once again, it's not too late to join. Catalyst brochures are available in the room. Take some with you. Share them with people. New members are always welcome to join us. In the meantime, on behalf of the steering committee, thank you for coming this evening. Please feel free to stay a little bit and socialize or talk to our speaker. And thank you very much, everybody.